Hi guys, welcome to Talk Ballroom. I'm Jonathan Green. This is Brendan White. And today we're going to talk about issues that beginner dancers run into. What are some issues that beginner dancers run into, Brendan?
First of all, it's how to practice, specifically how and what to practice. It's a very common thing that a lot of us run into as we start dancing. And when we start out as dancers, it can be very difficult knowing how and what to practice because typically we don't get a lot of information to practice. We get something that we just need to be typically reminded of rather than something we need to remember and constantly improve.
Yeah, you're new, right? You don't, how much did you learn? Probably not a lot. So a lot of times we think of practice as like, oh, I need to spend an hour or a decent amount of time, whatever you picture that as, practicing so that I remember this stuff. And really, you don't have enough information yet to practice for a decent amount of time. So that's to what he's saying. It's more so just about remembering what little bit you have. So it's not about carving out a lot of time to practice, more so just make sure once a day you run through and still remember the information you first learned. I mean, in the beginning, all you're learning is patterns, right?
Yeah.
Which is really the next thing we wanted to even chat about was remembering patterns and how to remember patterns and things like that. But in the beginning, it doesn't take much time at home to practice just marking your patterns. You get through in 5 minutes and you're like, all right, what's next? Next is class. Get more information so you have more stuff to practice.
And the thing with practice, you don't have to practice for long. We preach practicing consistently, trying to practice every day, even if it's for 30 seconds, going over a pattern or going over some mechanics. Just getting something every day rather than trying to carve out an hour to practice something.
Even as you get further along and you do have more things to practice, that is still the way to practice, that interval training, opposed to having long periods of time to practice. But again, in the beginning, you just can't practice for a long period of time. The better you get, the longer your practicing can go on. And this can confuse people in the beginning because teachers will say, make sure you practice and run through your stuff so next time you come into class, we don't have to run through it again. And people think, like we just said, they have to spend a lot of time on that. You don't. No, just check in on it. Make sure it's there. Hell, you could even probably get away with just practicing for 10 minutes before the next class starts, right before, and remember everything that you're doing in the beginning, at least within the first month, 2 months, possibly 3 months of your dancing, and of course dependent on what training you're taking, right? If you're taking private lessons, obviously you're going to grow a little bit quicker, a good amount quicker. If you're taking group classes only, you can grow fast depending on where you're taking those group classes at, but still not as quickly as people taking private lessons. And if you're not going out to dance parties and using your dancing, then you also won't be picking up the growth you can get from those as well. Really, all three things, parties, privates, and group classes, have value in their own specific way. So depending on how much you're investing your time will depend on how long that phase of, oh man, I don't know what I'm supposed to practice, will last.
And to like when I'm teaching and I give my student homework, okay, you need to practice this. Typically, it's normally a mechanic or a small part of a pattern, so they can get comfortable moving with it. Because you can always recap it, you can always go over a little bit through your next lesson or through your next class. But it's good to just, even if you keep running into a problem, still just going through something, getting comfortable and being able to move through it. Because we can always get through that. We can always move through that. We can always solve that problem. But when you're not practicing, or you're not taking even a little bit of time, then we have to kind of reteach it and rehash it more and spend more time on it than we'd like to. And that can slow progress.
And that's a really good thing to point out there, because actually even with the information we give you, you might still fail to practice. Like one of the other problems we see is people just don't practice. It's not that they tried and failed. It's that they never even tried. Again, if you do, to what you were saying, in terms of wanting them to come back and not go over the same information again, You're not getting a lot of information, but most people don't realize how helpful it is to run through that information again. Just because you were able to make it through the information doesn't mean you have it down well enough that you can recall it quickly, right? And the more you run through that, the more familiar, the more you get used to just grabbing that information, and that recall is there. And you can improve on that in the very beginning. It might be boring practice going over the patterns again. It would be. But it would be helpful, because all we're going to do is add more into that pattern, right? Patterns aren't what make up dance. Patterns are the template we use to put dance in, meaning what you do with your body is going to be ultimately the long-term work and what you will always be working on, opposed to patterns is just memorization. So you can crunch that memory. It's boring work, for sure, but you can do it if you are eager to progress. It will be worth the time. You should practice until it's boring, really is the way that we look at it.
And if you're coming from the other way, that you're maybe not full go, but you still want to practice, and you're getting through these patterns, again, you don't have to spend a ton of time on it. Even if you stay consistent with 30 seconds a day, I'm going to go through this pattern twice today. That's fine. And
great.
also too, I kind of struggle with this when I practiced, I constantly run into an issue or I can't remember a pattern. For one, always ask questions. Yeah, ask for videos, ask for any tool that can help you through it. Or if you're still in that position, just keep working up until you run into the problem. Just keep trying to. You might find you might be able to work through it. And that happens sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't.
Be patient with yourself.
But still, just staying consistent, just putting in that work, because we can work out the issue, no problem. But if you set it down, then more issues happen on top of that issue. Now we got many issues to deal with.
And one of the ways that you get yourself to really practice is by having goals, right? You have to know what it is you're practicing for, right? In the beginning, that's difficult because you're in the sort of exploration phase. You don't really know what dance is. You're trying to figure out whether it's something that's going to be in your life. How would you use it? All those things. So there's at least that, getting your feet wet phase where it's hard to set a goal for yourself. But there are still little miniature goals you can set that are for the purpose of exploring dance. Even if it's just picking out the one dance you like the most and exploring more patterns in it. Or maybe it's picking out a couple of different dances and wanting to experience multiple different dances in case maybe you don't like one of the dances, and fear there is that, I don't like this one dance isn't for me. Well, maybe one of the other dances you would like. But generally speaking, in my experience, I think people find out almost immediately when they start investing in one dance whether dance is something for them or not. But more so than that, what I see is people not make it to that step. They try out dance one time, and it was fun, it was okay, but because it's not familiar to them, there's no way to set a tangible goal for dance, or why am I going dancing, where am I going to use that? It slips to the wayside, and you just don't ever get back to it. But we all eventually get bored with life again and look for something to do, and dance is a fantastic pastime. It's not just more and more fun the more you do it, like many things are, but it's an incredible vehicle for self-growth and positivity in life.
And the nice part with goals is they can be adapted for whatever skill level you start at, how committed you are, and how much you want to dance, what you want to do. Goals are always adjusted and made for you to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're based on your situation. Whether it's you don't have the time or the budget or whatever it is you think is standing in the way of your dancing, there's always a way to be able to learn and grow your dancing, even on a small budget, even with little time. There's always a way, if you plan it out, to make progress. You just have to establish, what are my parameters in the beginning so that I can make my progress or plan my path efficiently, right?
And as you go into this road, invest in yourself here. You're gonna go through times where you love dance, and that's all you want to do. There's gonna be times where you're like, oh, I gotta go dance.
Practice.
Yeah, I gotta practice. You're gonna have your ebbs and flows, but take
like
that.
Anything.
Yeah, take that investment for yourself. It's a great journey, no matter where you start, no matter where you end. And it is always what you make it to be.
Well, I hope this was helpful. We will be doing another Talk Ballroom, and I actually can't remember off the top of my head what the topic will be, but stay tuned because it will be awesome. Thanks so much for coming, guys, and we'll see you next time.